Ag Life, presented by ADM Lloydminster.
Hello again and welcome to our agriculture show, Ag Life. I'm Gerard Lampow. On the menu, we meet a Saskatchewan researcher to chat about cover crops, plus a couple of farmers delve into farming myths, and we find out what Alberta beef wants from the incoming government. But first, it's time for another visit from our ag partner, ADM. Let's welcome back grain buyer Larry Lundquist.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this time, be here.
It's super to have you, because one of the things that we see a lot for folks driving on Highway 16 or 44, if you want to look at it that way, is the trucks taking the grain to ADM. And lots of times we don't understand how important that whole process is, especially where safety is concerned. So tell us something about that.
Yes, our plant can only take seed in by truck. We can't take seed in by rail car like some plants can. So it's very important that the trucks operate smoothly on site. When they come in, the first thing they've got to do is check in at security. They usually check in and book it. They have a booked in time, check in for their time, and they get to line up on the pad. We've changed the way they line up on the pad now. They do it horizontally instead of vertically, and we're not going to worry about going into that right now.
Yeah.
But they wait their turn, and once their turn comes about, then they move forward to a kiosk, which is like an ATM. And they've been assigned a card which has a barcode on it, and that is specific to their truck and their truck only. And when they scan that barcode, it brings their truck up, and then they have the choice of whoever they're hauling for. If they're a commercial trucker, they'll have the various farmers they're working for. If they're just their own personal farmer, it'll come up with their company name or their personal name. They select that person, then they put in a contract number, which they've got ahead of time, and they go through, and there's other questions that they have to fill out depending on what the requests are of the farmer that they're delivering for. From that point, they move forward to the probe stand. And the probe stand is, all it is two probes, and they take stick into the trailer, and they open up and they suck out an equal amount of seed out of every hopper that you have, and it gets blended in a canister in the system, comes out into a bag that we save, and a second bag that we use for taking dockage, checking for green seed, checking for moisture, and checking for heated kernels. Then once we've graded it, then we know where we're going to send the truck, which lane, which bin it has to go into. The truckers will have lights over top of them that show them where they're supposed to head to, either lane 1 or lane 2.
As the case might be there.
Right.
So the probe goes in. How long is that probe, mind you?
Well, it can go right from the top.
Right down to the bottom?
Right to the bottom. We try not to poke the bottom of the truckers' trucks and make holes or dents or anything like that.
You might break the probe.
Yeah, well, usually the probe isn't what breaks. The probe is, it's just, there's two of them. There's one for each trailer or one for each hopper. And it's just opens up, and it's a vacuum system, vacuums the seed out up into the building upstairs.
Right. So you test it then, and then you know where the truck has got to go with that particular. That's really awesome. So then that speeds things up. You know how much green, how much dockage is it, and then you can say this bin as opposed to.
That's right. Or if the load is so bad we have to reject it, then we can contact the farmer owner, whether he's in the truck or at home, and tell him what's happened. And that we can't accept a sample, the grain that's coming, the load, that's coming in due to their sample.
Yeah, but I'll go on record as saying we have great producers in that area, and that hardly ever happens.
It's very rare.
Very rare.
This year's been a bit of a challenge with the greens, but it's very rare when we have to reject a load.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you have the final say. I think the most important thing is staying safe through this entire process. I'll let you have the final say on that part.
Yes, we want the guys to be careful when they're out there. There's a lot of trucks in one spot. They're all close together. Pay attention to what other people are doing and walking, and there's never that big a hurry that you have to rush your truck through.
That's so important, staying safe as we move the best canola product on the planet. Well, when we come back, a Saskatchewan researcher shares with us about cover crops. Do stay with us.
This segment of Ag Life is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Webb's Machinery, your New Holland dealer in Vermilion, Vegreville, and Lamont.
While cover crops have come on as producers seek to feed their cattle in a more sustainable manner, let's find out some more from a researcher based in Saskatchewan.
So cover crops are crops that are typically grown for a purpose other than to be harvested as a cash crop. So to improve the soil or provide other ecosystem benefits.
Gillian Baynard is a scientist working at the Swift Current Research and Development Center. She grew up on a farm in southern Alberta and did a PhD in botany. She says cover crops offer better soil nutrition, better weed control, nutrient cycling, and water retention.
The important thing that we're looking at in a forage setting is how that above ground plant material can then also be used as feed for cattle.
Research is ongoing into the types of crops that grow better on the prairies, as it tends to be regionally specific.
Producers are looking for mixes of cereals, so something like barley and oats, some legumes like peas or vetches or clovers, and then some brassicas, which include things like radishes and turnips.
With calving season on the go, cows need energy. Cover crops offer a good amount of biomass.
And you can also get nutritional values that are better than crops grown on their own when you have them in this mixture. So for example, including things like peas and radish, you actually can improve the digestibility and improve the crude protein content of your feed supply. Reducing our reliance on inputs also results in a more economically sustainable practice and more cash in hand for the farmer.
And when we come back, we return to License to Farm. A couple of farmers sit down for a chat about the food story. Do stay with us. This next segment comes to us from Sask Canola. License to Farm tackled the hot-button topics facing agriculture. We're also sharing the interview segments, and here's the one dealing with farming myths as two farmers sit down to share about how our food is grown.
Food is such a primary element, like everyone has to eat. And so farmers are really facing questions about how they produce food. How is it that this food comes to be on my plate, and is it safe?
I really have seen the loss of our social license. Our privilege to operate on the farm feels like it's slowly eroding. The people that I come in contact with still have a very romantic notion, a very nostalgic notion about what a farmer looks like. You know, the old man with the pitchfork.
A lot of people want their lives to change, but they don't want farmers' lives to change. So a lot of people would be really insulted if you told them they had to put away their iPhone and they had to go back to a phone that you actually turned the crank on in order to get 3 rings. So their idea is, though, that farmers will continue to use the technology that was around when the phone was a crank phone. And so the rest of society gets to move forward, and farmers are then held back and regulated in some sort of romantic sense about what it is we think they should be doing. And that eventually becomes a problem for all of society.
Historically speaking, our farm has gone from a small size family farm operation to a large size family farm operation. We seed 13,000 acres this spring, and that's considered to be a pretty big farm. And in truth, we're very proud that we have grown to that capacity. We feel really good about being able to seed that many acres as a family farm. It's my husband and I, it's his brother and his wife, and his parents are still farming with us. By everybody's definition, we are a family farm. We also, for business purposes, have incorporated that farm. So it's confusing when we hear about corporate farms versus family farms. And the truth is that 97% of the farms in Canada are still family owned and operated.
Well, one of the things that people don't understand probably is that farms are really technically advanced. That over the years, farmers are one of the earliest adopters of any kind of technology. So that's the technology that you assume right off the bat, which is new types of computers, new types of GPS, new types of electronic technology. But farmers also have adapted a lot of technology in terms of new types of seeds and new types of farming practices. So farmers at the very heart are innovators.
One of the toughest questions that we get as farmers is around the use of pesticides. Are you dousing your fields with toxic chemicals? So farmers refer to pesticides as crop protection products because that's what they do. They protect the crop. A healthy plant produces healthy food. So it's my job as a farmer to produce the healthiest, most viable plants that we can grow. For me, it was never about organic versus conventional because I grew up in a farming environment. I had, I guess, a better understanding of the products that we're using, why they're safe, why it's okay. It never occurred to me, I never really had that preconceived notion that a pesticide is a very bad thing. But I have noticed that I've never met anybody that gets a really warm, fuzzy feeling when they hear the word pesticide. So I appreciate that it requires some explanation sometimes.
So the first thing to consider is that everything has been tested, and everything that farmers use is deemed to be safe the way the farmers use them. And even with, if they use them to 10 times the amount they use them, they still would be considered safe on the food that you're eating. And the other thing to think about is that farmers are the people who are actually using these things. So they're the ones who are the most concerned about spraying something too close to their house, or too close to their school, or that they're actually the ones who are pouring it into tanks. So if they had any concern whatsoever that some of these products were unsafe to use or unsafe for the environment, they would be the first ones affected and the first ones to make sure that they weren't used.
I use the example as a mother. I wouldn't give my kids medicine if they weren't sick. And the same goes for a farmer. We wouldn't use a chemical product on our crop if it didn't need it. We use those products to address a very specific concern. It may be a disease concern, it may be an insect concern, but rest assured the products that we're using are specific and necessary for the viability and health of that plant.
When farmers go to visit their friends and relatives in the city, it could be a cousin, or you could be just sitting down beside somebody at a wedding or something, and people right away say, "Well, you don't use any of those genetically modified stuff, do you?" And it's very awkward. I've been at funerals where people have come up to me and wanted to know if I was using all the kinds of stuff that they felt was hazardous to mankind. And for farmers, like we adopt these new methods of farming, and we do it on the basis that that we know it's been tested and that it's safe. But then we have to try to explain that to people who don't have any idea what it is we actually do anymore.
So there's a general misconception that farmers are handcuffed and that we're forced to grow seeds that are given to us by these big bad seed companies. And it's just simply not true. Farmers have a variety of seed choices, 20 to 30 different companies for the commodities that we want to grow. We are able to make that decision. If science can continue to be a part of seed development, farmers are going to have more opportunity to grow the food that we need with potentially the use of less pesticides, with better disease prevention, some drought tolerance. The seed varieties that have science behind them allow us to better manage our risk in the field. For example, on our farm, the land that we're farming today has been in our family for more than 100 years. It is in our best interest to be sustainable, to leave that land in better condition for the next generation than was left to us.
There are a lot more people on the earth now than what there was even 50, 60 years ago. Because we can grow a lot more food on fewer acres, we're able to actually protect the environment. If you had to grow food the way it was grown 50 years ago, there wouldn't be any trees left in the Amazon.
The population around the globe is increasing. And as a farmer, I get to be part of the answer to global hunger. And I believe as a farmer that science is going to help us solve that problem. I want science and agriculture to be part of the solution.
We adopt these new methods of farming, and we do it on the basis that that we know it's been tested and that it's safe. We do it because we feel that we have a duty to feed humanity. It sounds corny when you say it, but farmers really do take that on.
Farmers are more legislated, there's more regulation that is coming down, there's a lot of misinformation, and that worries me.
So one of the things which is really interesting is the impact of a new technology called Facebook.
Canadians really do want to hear more about the food that's being grown in this country. They're excited about what it is that they're eating. They're starting to learn more. They're getting a lot of their information from social media, from Facebook, from Google.
You have a lot of different competing interests in terms of trying to tell the story of farmers for their own reasons. Now, these things aren't based on science, and people just know it's true, whether it's true or not.
I grew up on a farm, so it never occurred to me before that people wouldn't understand how food was grown on a farm. And now that I'm starting to understand that the majority of Canadians are 2 generations removed from the farm. Okay, now I understand why it is that they don't know what's happening on the farm. Now I feel like I can be more empathetic.
I love farming, and I love the way that we farm. Because when we're trying to grow food, we want to take care of the land that we grow it on. Because this is the land that we've had for generations. And I'm not going to grow food I wouldn't feed to my kids, and I'm not going to do something to the land that's going to affect my neighbors. You can rest assured that I am doing this in a way that is safe for you as well.
That was a moment for me. The first time somebody told me, "You're the first farmer I've ever met." And I realized that it is going to be my opportunity. It is part of my job. It's part of my responsibility to get involved in the education so that I can continue the privilege of operating as a farmer in Saskatchewan.
And still to come, we find out what the beef sector wants as the election dust in Alberta is settling. Do stay with us.
Ag Life, presented by ADM Lloydminster.
Go big or go home. That's the saying that could easily be a mantra for an election. I find out what Alberta Beef wants from the incoming government.
ABP strongly feels that Alberta Agriculture and Forestry Science Research and Innovation Framework be reworked.
As the dust settles following the Alberta elections, Chair of Alberta Beef, Charlie Christie, has a wish list. He feels Alberta agriculture needs to realign their research and extension priorities closer to the beef sector and focus on production-based research.
Priority areas for our industry are animal health and welfare, antimicrobial use and resistance, feed grains and feed efficiency, and environmental research focused on forage and grassland productivity, beef quality, and food safety.
He wants the ministry's researchers to be able to get grant funding from the province.
We need to open that process up where money can move more freely. We have great capacity within the province infrastructure, and we need to be able to get funding into their hands in a more streamlined fashion.
Christie says co-funding will also help to align industry and government priorities. He's pushing for forage research.
About 5 years back, the government and industry recognized that we were weak on forage research and weak on tying the research back to actually beef production. And with that recognition, the Alberta Beef Forage and Grazing Centre was created, and we'd really like to see that committed to.
Christie is also keen on extension research.
The recognition now that extension is a key part of research and getting the benefits of the dollars spent on research back to the producer is key in realizing the return on investment for research dollars.
Time will tell whether this wish list comes true.
And it's time to roll our events calendar. If you want to get in on this part of the show, just email me, glampow@stingray.com. Let's have a look. That's a wrap on this edition of Ag Life. Yours in Ag. Take care.